In the desolate heart of the city, where shadows crept like specters and whispers lingered in the air like curses, there stood the imposing structure of Ravenwood Penitentiary. Its towering walls loomed over the surrounding neighborhood, casting a foreboding shadow over those who dared to glance its way. Inside its grim confines, a darkness festered, a darkness that consumed the souls of men. Jake had never imagined he would find himself within those walls. But fate had a cruel sense of humor, and now he stood at the mercy of the system, accused of a crime he did not commit. As the heavy iron gates clanged shut behind him, he felt a chill run down his spine, a premonition of the horrors that awaited him within. The days bled into nights, and Jake became accustomed to the routine of prison life. But there was something sinister lurking beneath the surface, something that whispered of unspeakable deeds committed in the dead of night. It started with the whispers, faint echoes that reverberated through the corridors like the anguished cries of the damned. Jake tried to ignore them, to convince himself they were nothing more than the ramblings of disturbed minds. But as the nights wore on, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, until they filled his every waking moment with dread. Then came the shadows, twisting and contorting in the flickering light of the prison's dimly lit hallways. Jake would catch glimpses of them out of the corner of his eye, fleeting and ephemeral, yet undeniably real. They seemed to dance and sway to some macabre tune, beckoning him into their dark embrace. But it was the Cellblock that held the true terror. In the dead of night, when the world outside lay shrouded in darkness, the Cellblock came alive with an otherworldly energy. Jake would lie awake in his bunk, listening to the sound of footsteps echoing down the empty corridors. Each footfall a chilling reminder of the souls trapped within those walls. And then there were the screams, blood-curdling shrieks that tore through the silence of the night, filling Jake's ears with their haunting melody. He would huddle beneath his thin blanket, praying for the dawn to come and banish the darkness that threatened to consume him. But the dawn brought no respite, only the cold realization that he was trapped in a nightmare from which there was no escape. For within the bowels of Ravenwood Penitentiary, the line between the living and the dead had blurred, and Jake found himself at the mercy of forces beyond his comprehension. As the days stretched into weeks, Jake's sanity began to unravel, his mind succumbing to the relentless onslaught of terror that besieged him at every turn. He became a shell of his former self, haunted by the specters that lurked in the shadows, tormented by the echoes of the Cellblock. And then one fateful night, as Jake lay trembling in his bunk, he felt a cold hand brush against his skin, its touch like ice against his flesh. With a scream that echoed through the empty halls, he realized the true horror of Ravenwood Penitentiary. For he was not alone in his cell. The cold hand gripping Jake's wrist tightened its grip, its icy fingers sending shivers down his spine. Paralyzed by fear, Jake dared not move as he felt a presence looming over him. A presence that exuded a malevolent energy that seemed to suffocate the very air around him. With trembling breaths, Jake summoned the courage to turn his gaze towards the figure standing in the darkness. What he saw sent a wave of terror crashing over him. A spectral apparition, its features twisted in agony, its eyes burning with an otherworldly fire. Who are you?" Jake managed to stammer, his voice barely above a whisper. The apparition's lips curled into a ghastly grin, revealing rows of jagged teeth that seemed to glow in the dim light of the cell. "I am the one they call the Warden," it whispered, its voice a chilling echo that reverberated through the empty space. "And you, Jake, are mine to torment for all eternity." Jake's heart pounded in his chest as the realization of his fate washed over him. Trapped within the walls of Ravenwood Penitentiary, he was now at the mercy of a vengeful spirit whose thirst for suffering knew no bounds. But even as despair threatened to consume him, a flicker of defiance ignited within Jake's soul. With a strength born of desperation, he summoned every ounce of courage he possessed and dared to confront the Warden. "Why torment me?" he demanded, his voice quaking with defiance. "What have I done to deserve this?" The Warden's laughter echoed through the Cellblock, a cacophony of malevolent glee that chilled Jake to the bone. "You are but a pawn in a game much larger than yourself, Jake," it sneered. "You have trespassed into my domain, and now you must pay the price." With a wave of its ethereal hand, the warden unleashed a torrent of horrors upon Jake. Visions of unspeakable suffering, nightmares made flesh that twisted and writhed in the darkness. But even as the darkness threatened to consume him, Jake refused to yield. With a primal roar, he lunged at the warden, his fists striking out against the ghostly apparition with all the fury of a man possessed. For what felt like an eternity, the two battled amidst the swirling shadows of the cell block, locked in a struggle for supremacy. But in the end, it was Jake's indomitable spirit that emerged victorious. With a final burst of strength, he banished the warden back into the darkness from whence it came, sealing it away for all eternity. As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, Jake emerged from his ordeal a changed man. Though the scars of his ordeal would linger forever, he carried with him a newfound sense of resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. And so, as he stepped out into the world beyond the prison walls, Jake vowed to never forget the horrors he had witnessed within Ravenwood Penitentiary. For though the shadows may linger and the echoes may haunt, he knew that he was no longer bound by the chains of fear.